All right, well, good evening, everybody. Yep, and it is Friday. And for those of you who were on the line earlier, for some of us, this has been one heck of a week. It's been a long one. It's been a doozy, but it is over. So again, want to welcome all of you. Want to welcome those of you who are listening to us at Spreaker.com. Your week is over, too, and we thank God. Well, listen, let's just dive right into it. You know, it's Friday. It's just a reminder real quickly. Monday and Friday coming up will be our last two meetings for the year. Again, please remember, next Friday, the 21st, is our last meeting of the year. We will be on break until Monday, January 7th. Please keep that in your notebooks. I don't want somebody to get online and be like, where's Pastor B? He's not here. We will, after next Friday, not this one, the next one will be our last one. So 2 more meetings left after tonight. Well, as we continue our series, Prince of Peace, if you have been with us so far, and most of you have been, in our series that we have been discussing the names given to Christ and written in the book of Isaiah, we talked about a God who couldn't wait to tell the people about the coming of Christmas, his son, Jesus Christ. And it was foretold through the prophet Isaiah some 700 years before it even happened. It was a prophecy about an amazing baby who would be born, the Prince of Peace. And for the sake of anyone who may be joining or listening to us for the first time on Spreaker.com, we are focusing or using the scripture verses found in the book of Isaiah, the 9th chapter. And as we continue again, I want to continue with the progression that we've been making through the 4 names that God says his son will be known by. In our first lesson, we covered why he is called a wonderful counselor. Then on Monday, we covered why he is called a mighty God. So tonight, we're going to touch on why he is called everlasting Father. And primarily, this message will be what we can refer to as a heart message, right? I want to get to the heart of the matter. I want this to be a message deep within the recesses of our heart. It is a message that is aimed at warming up our hearts to the babe that was born in Bethlehem, who grew up to be a young man who will come back as a ruling king and a conqueror. Well, before we aim for the heart, I want to begin quickly, as I always do. Try giving you, especially those of you like me, who love facts and data, I want to give you some brain candy, if you will, because it's important that we understand some important facts. First, I want to give you a little history so that you can grasp things a little clearer. Okay, so the book where our scripture verses come from, as I mentioned, is called the book of Isaiah. And the prophet Isaiah wrote from about 740 BC to 680 BC. And he lived in the southern part of Israel during a time when the northern part of Israel was being chewed up and torn apart by the Assyrians. So it was a scary time in Israel's history because they were at war. Now, during the first half of Isaiah, God addresses the nation of Israel to warn them about this war and how to cope with it. And during the second section of the book, God addresses Israel about the aftermath of the war to give them hope. So there are 2 sections, if you will, to the book. One about how to live before hope comes, which is Jesus Christ, and one on how to live now that you have hope in Jesus Christ. There are 66 chapters in the book of Isaiah. The first 39 chapters are what we can refer to as pre-hope chapters. And then the last 27 are, as I just mentioned, are in the hope chapters. It talks about Christ coming, the baby being born in a manger. And basically, they're all about knowing God and having a relationship with him. And here's an interesting fact, and again, this kind of goes off topic, but, sometimes as you're doing studies, things pop up. You say, that's pretty interesting, right? So I just mentioned the book of Isaiah has 66 chapters and is broken into 39 chapters. The first part, 39 chapters, the pre-hope, and then the 27 after that. Well, in the Bible itself, all right, we have 66 books, right? It's the same thing, right? And it's split up in the same way. There are 39 books in the Old Testament and 27 in the New Testament. So I found that kind of, funny, if you will. I mean, just uncanny that it kind of worked out that way. But now quickly getting back to the book of Isaiah, Isaiah 7 to 12, those chapters, those books, are what many call the book of Emmanuel. That is because it talks about the coming of Emmanuel, God with us. That's what Emmanuel stands for. And in 7:14, Isaiah 7:14, it says that he will be born of a virgin. In 11:1, it predicts that he will be from the house of Jesse. In 11:2, it says that God's Spirit will be upon him. And on Monday, when we come back, we're going to look at the prophecies found in chapter 11 when he comes. Not the first time, because we know he came before, but the second time, when the government will physically be on his shoulders, not just spiritually as it is today. So that's enough of the brain food. Now let's get to the heart. Real quickly, Isaiah 9:6 says, For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Yes, my brothers and sisters, he will be called Everlasting Fathers, which, when you really stop and think about it, is really intriguing. Of all the titles given to the Christ child, this one probably raises the most questions. After all, how can a child be an everlasting father? And how can a newborn be so old as to be called everlasting? Well, simply, the answer to question one is this, is that eventually we know he is going to grow up. That's the bottom line. The answer to the second question is that he had an existence long before he came to earth. And so that I remain consistent with what I've been doing so far with my other teachings, I've been giving you the Hebrew root words or the meanings. The Hebrew word for everlasting father is Abiyad. And again, please forgive me if I'm not linguistically saying that correctly. But it's actually a hyphenated word, meaning two parts. The first part is Abi. Some will say Abba, which means father, right? Abba, father. It's the root from which we get the word abbot, or for the chief father at a monastery, for to give you an example. The second part, Ad, means everlasting or eternal or unceasing in duration. The child born in Bethlehem will be recognized as eternal. He had no beginning, he has no end, he existed before he came to earth, and he will exist forever. Thus, everlasting Father. So what did God have in mind when he gave his son this title? What did he want us to imagine when he announced this coming of his child 700 years approximately before it happened? Better yet, what difference does it even make to us today? Well, my brothers and sisters, to be brutally honest, from a technical standpoint, I really don't have an answer for you. But I want to give you my answer, or my best understanding, if you will. People, as I mentioned before, were living in shaky times. So they wanted something that they could cling to. And maybe that's something familiar to some of you. You're going through some real difficult times in your life. There are some real shaky times, just as the people of God were going through. And you're looking something to cling for, or to cling on to. As someone said before, hold on. I said, hang on. So people were living in shaky times. They want someone they could depend on, a father figure, if you will. So God promised them both in his son, Jesus Christ. He said first, the one who is coming is everlasting. In other words, he is eternal. He's always existed and always will. That's the bottom line. There is no beginning. There is no end. And this is where the Bible gets tricky for many people. When they hear the word eternal, they go, eternal? Always existed and always will? That's a concept that for many, it's hard to grasp. I understand. I get it. It's not easy. But the Bible tells us a story in the book of John and tells us that at one point, some religious leaders questioned Jesus on a number of issues. They questioned his authority. They questioned his origin. They questioned his motives. It was a fairly ugly conversation. It was one like they were challenging him and basically saying, and I'm paraphrasing, who do you think you are? Where are you from? You know, where are you coming from? Who gives you authority? So finally, Jesus tries to lighten up the conversation a bit. And again, I'm paraphrasing. He probably says something like, come on, guys, lighten up. Just be happy I'm here. Just before he says in John 8:56, your father Abraham rejoiced at the thought of seeing my day. He saw it and was glad. Now understand what he's saying here, my brothers and sisters. He's saying, I knew all about Abraham. And better yet, in fact, I knew Abraham. Well, no doubt these religious leaders, they pick up on that right away and they say, whoa there. You are not yet 50 years old. I'm reading from John 8:57, the next verse. You are not yet 50 years old, the Jews said to him, and you have seen Abraham? Jesus replies in the next sentence, I tell you the truth. Jesus answered, before Abraham was born, I am. And to fully understand this statement, my brothers and sisters, you have to understand and know that I am is a name that God used to reveal himself to Moses. And it's an amazing title if you really stop and think about it. It is tailor fit for God. Because when you try to describe God, the most accurate statement that you can make about him is simply, he is. He exists fully. He exists everywhere. He's existing at all times. He always has, always will be. He is. Full existence. That is God. He is. No better explanation needed. So in this statement, when Jesus says, I am, he is saying, I am not only older than Abraham, I have existed forever because I am God. He is eternal. That babe born in a manger has always existed. And again, as I said before, he always will exist. He is the everlasting Father, the Father forever. Now, the second part of the phrase that I said in that breaking down is Father. Right, his son was born a child, no doubt about that. But look what happened when Jesus grew up. He cared for people just like a father does. And this is, please, I want to just say, not that mothers don't take care. We know mothers are the most important role. But Jesus took care of people like a father does. He nurtured sick people back to health, just like a father does. He prayed for people, just like a father does. He was there for people. He was strong and dependable, like a father does. You see, my brothers and sisters, fathers, if they are to be anything in the lives of their children, they ought to do certain things and hold certain places in their lives. For instance, fathers ought to believe in their children. If you study the life of Jesus, you'll find someone who believed in people constantly. Jesus believed in people. Fathers ought to be firm but loving, which is just how Jesus handled people. Love was everything what he was about. He was the very definition of love, but he was firm when he needed to be. At the same token, fathers ought to provide a place out of which their children can derive an identity. So they can say, like I can say, I'm a Villanueva. I come from a long line of Villanuevas. We know who we are. We're proud who we are. And it's no different than saying I'm a Jennings or I'm a Smith or whatever. Jesus did that. And for 2 millennia, followers of his have been saying, I'm a Christian. And I am historically linked to generations of Christians all the way back to Christ. In addition, fathers ought to be thinking about and planning for their children's future. That's what we do. I talk about that all the time, about my children. And in John 14:1, Jesus said, I am going to prepare a place for you. He was thinking about the future of his children. Let me quickly tell you 2 stories that illustrate the fatherliness of Jesus. One time as Jesus is traveling up to Jerusalem, he gets word that the king of Jerusalem, a man named King Herod, wants to kill him. Jesus doesn't shiver or shake or when he hears this. He's not a man filled with fear. He doesn't turn around and head back out into the country. He keeps going forward. A few hours later, as he gets near to where he's going from the last hill, he's able to look out over the city that is laid out before him, and he says to him these words found in Luke 13:34. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, You who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you, how often I have longed to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you are not willing. I'm sure you can hear the longings of a parent in that statement. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you have no idea how I care for you. That's what Jesus is saying there. How often I wanted to just scoop you up and wrap my arms around you. That's what Christ is saying in his words, like a father. Another time, Jesus gets word that a close friend of his is near death, and he heads to his friend's house. But before he gets there, the friend has died. When word gets out that Jesus is about to enter their village, the friend's sister, whose name is Mary, runs out of the house all the way down the street and in sheer agony collapses at Jesus' feet in a sobbing heap. And let me quickly read what happens next, and it's found in the book of John, the 11th chapter. It says, when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. I don't know about you, but that sounds very fatherly to me. And if you were with us on Monday, we discovered that the phrase just before everlasting Father means a strong God. And at the end of the message that I preached on Monday, I asked each of you to put your hands on your laps. For those of you who could put both hands, I said if you were holding a phone in your hand, then just put one hand. And then I said to put all those troubles, to kind of imagine putting every trouble in your hand. And then opening it up to God and saying, God, here's the stuff that's troubling me. To just give it to the Lord. And I have no doubt that for some of you, that felt good. Because there are times that we need to do that, my brothers and sisters. We need to sit before the Lord in prayer and say, God, here's everything that's troubling me. Please take it. You know what the next move is? We need to let God wrap his fatherly arms around us and just simply hold us. I don't know about you, but I remember the times when I was held as a child, when things seemed fearful, when things weren't going my way, even as an adolescent, even as a teenager. It felt good to have someone wrap their arms around me. Again, listen to these words, my brothers and sisters, said by Jesus. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. So as we come to a close tonight, and as we come to the end of our week, as I said before, for some of us, this has been a real hectic week. For some of us, this has just been a continuation of all the hectic weeks we've been having. It's been a non-stop hectic life. I understand it. Trust me, I do. But as we come to the close, I'm going to ask each of you again, right where you're at, to simply, if you can, and I'm assuming everyone is home, to quickly close your eyes for a second. Just relax. Being mindful that there's nobody there in the comfort of your home that's going to judge you. Nobody there staring at you in a weird way. Just close your eyes. Now in your mind, I want you to imagine yourself again holding all the problems that we gave to Christ. All those problems that may be troubling, even some new ones that may have popped up. I want you to imagine yourself again handing them over to Jesus. Every little thing that's been troubling you in your life right now. Financial troubles, health issues, marital problems, trouble with the kids, maybe trouble in your job, your boss. Whatever it is, I want you for a moment right now to imagine you just giving it to Jesus, turning it over to him. Now, I want you to take a deep breath. And right where you're at, I want you to imagine him right now, wrapping his fatherly arms around you. Go a little further. You know, they say the mind is a powerful thing. As children, they tell us we can imagine whatever we want to be. We can be an astronaut. We can be a pilot, whatever it is. They say in the imagination, you can be whatever it is. And often our mind helps us to get that security to believe things. So I want you to just delve into what I'm saying. Not only do I want you to imagine him wrapping his arms around you, I want you for a moment to even sense yourself heaving a few sighs of relief as you feel his comforting arms around you, and him gently whispering, "It's okay. I'm here, and I won't ever leave you. How I've longed to gather you under my wings." As we come to a close tonight in prayer.